Today we're asking the question, what is a biological record? Are you a rarity or are you common? Are there many of you or just the one? Well, there may be only one of you, but there are lots of other humans like you of the same species. When making wildlife sightings, naturalists aren't often interested in individuals. They're looking out for different types or species of creatures, not usually a specific one. If there are a lot of the same thing, they're considered as common, frequent or abundant. But if a type of species is not very often seen, then it's considered to be rare or infrequent or scarce. It's no longer seen at all, then you may be what's called extinct. But the thing I'm looking at today is, how does anyone know if something's rare or common? In order to know that, someone has to note if it's there or if it's not, or how often it's seen. We call this biological recording. By remembering or recording when we see things, we might recognise when we stop seeing them, which could be really important. Knowing what's out there can be really useful to those people who study and protect our wildlife and green spaces. They want to know that everything's there that should be, and spot when things change, and when important things disappear, or are at least seen less often. We can all be nature detectives and help to create a picture of what is here now, so that we can measure changes between what is here today and what is around in the future, and then protect the world around us. Do you need to be an expert to do this? Do you have to go to special places to look for things? Well, no. Just record what you know. You might notice just what seemed really obvious to you, like the birds and the butterflies, or perhaps you can recognise things like frogs, or at least frog spawn. Whatever catches your eye or holds your interest, make a note of those things. A pretty important thing is to be sure of what you're recording. There are a lot of ways to recognise and identify wildlife. At first, just get to know a few species, or even if you can't always see them, try to recognise other things that might tell you that they've been around, signs and tracks. Obviously, you might actually see it. Perhaps a great big deer, or just a small bird, or a bee, or a butterfly. Whatever it is, tiny or small, it's really interesting and important and helpful to note that you've seen those things. A record might not be a sighting of the actual animal or plant. It could be something that gives a clue to whether the thing is or has been nearby. A proper detective will be noticing all the clues. Even if the thing isn't there anymore, or it has changed its appearance through the year, there might be signs that it has been, and you can recognise that. The sort of clues you might be looking for as a nature detective include listening. What sounds can you hear? A bird's song? Or a grasshopper, perhaps? Each bird and grasshopper species makes a different sound. If you learn to recognise them, you can identify them without seeing them. What tracks and signs can you find? Many animals leave behind their distinctive footprints. This muddy slide into the river was made by an otter. And what about poo? Did you know that not all animal poo is the same? Otter poo might show signs of things that it's eaten, like fish bones or crayfish legs, but it also smells really nice. A kind of fishy jasmine kind of smell. But you do need to get quite close to find out. Badgers, too, can be recorded by their poo. They come out at night, so perhaps you don't see the badger very much, but you can find what they called a latrine, which is an area where badgers go to poo, and it has a distinctive smell, so you can see where they've been. Again, you can recognise it with a sniff. It's not as nice as an otter, but it's not unpleasant, and it's certainly not as unpleasant as frogs, so you can tell the difference between those two. And while we're using our nose, there are some fungi that can be tracked down by smell. Some stink horns are named after their odour. And I found this amazing fungus by tracking down the smell of rotting flesh that it gives off to attract flies. It's an amazing looking thing, but it's easy to smell than it is to find sometimes. It doesn't just smell of rotting flesh, but it seems to bleed too. Incredible thing. It's called devil's fingers fungus. It's very rare around Sheffield, so recording something like that is really important. And if you want just a bit more poo, here are some distinctive green water vole droppings. Water voles are lovely and rapidly disappearing from our countryside, so it's important to record where we've seen them. As well as by their droppings, you can recognise their presence by the way they leave bits of vegetation cut at an angle where they've been feeding. And what are these? These molehills show where a mole has popped up to the surface. So even though they're hidden underground, you can tell that they're not far away by the sign of their activity on the surface. So it's an easy thing to record, though you may never see a mole in your life, but you see a lot of molehills. A lot of insects leave signs of their presence that can be identified too. For example, the leaf mines in horse chestnut leaves are caused by a specific little moth that has only been in this country for a few years. And now it's very common to see this in sort of August, September onwards, all these brown marks on horse chestnut leaves. But by recording where the leaves have started to look like this, the spread of the moth has been recorded as it's moved from Wimbledon in 2002, where it was first noticed, right up to York by 2007, and Cumbria in 2010, and all the way to Scotland by 2014. So just by observing a sign of where a moth has been, it's been tracked right across the country as it's basically invaded and moved across. Now, you aren't just limited to recording species in the summer. There are lots of these signs that can be seen all year. Even a tree with no leaves can be identified by the fallen leaves and the fruits and the nuts that are left behind, like acorns and hazelnuts underneath, will tell you what species of tree is, so you can record it. Maybe the most important thing to learn when recording things is how many other things look or sound or smell like that. To start with, you can try to recognise those things that are really distinctive or unmistakable. But when people become a little bit more expert and get a bit more knowledge and understand a little bit more, you can actually learn that some things that look similar are actually different, and then gain more experience to know which one is which. But there are loads of things that you can look for that are really easy to recognise at first and be very accurate with your records. And there are lots of things to help you identify them correctly. Do you remember books? Loads of books that you can use to identify species and help you to work out what it is that you're actually looking at. Some seriously fantastic books are out there now, and they've come out in recent years. There's just some amazing publications that can tell you everything that you want to know, from woodlice to wood mice and bees to trees. But of course, there's the internet, and there is loads of information on there, loads of sites with photos and places to go, and things help you identify what it is that you're looking at. And experts will give you clues and pointers to help you to narrow down what it is that you've seen. There are also apps on phones that will show you the pictures of butterflies or grasshoppers, ones that actually even recognise the leaves of flowers. So just by using your phone, you can actually point it at something and it might be able to identify it for you. There's all sorts of clever things out there that you can use these days. It's never really been easier. But is that it? Not quite. Just seeing something isn't going to change the world unless you tell someone. There are scientists and nature reserve managers and conservation experts who need to know the most up-to-date information that's available to them and make decisions based on that. So you can help by passing on your knowledge of where you saw something and when you saw it, and perhaps even what it was doing. A full biological record needs to say 4 basic things: what it was that you saw, where you were, when you noticed it, what the date was, and who you are. If you can pass on that information, you're contributing to real, solid and important science. You can go over to the Nature Counts website for more information now, and that's at wildsheffield.com/sightings. It doesn't matter if what you've seen is an amazing new species never seen in England before, or just something really common that you've seen 1,000 times. It's just really useful to record anything at all. One day there might be lots more of these things, or none at all, and your record will show how many there were this year, and perhaps no one else bothered to record that. So, biological recording is like a treasure hunt. But there's treasure everywhere. Hunt around, see what you can recognise, or use your detective research skills and try to find out the name of something. Then be a real scientist by sending the record of your discovery to somewhere where it can be used to help save wildlife. You could also join the Wildlife Trust and find out more about wildlife that you see, so you can really use your nature detecting skills. Take action for nature and sign up today on our website.